Lily Turner learned very early in life that some people are simply not seen. She was 7 years old when her father remarried, and from that day on, she became a shadow in her own home. Her stepmother, Diane, ran the household with cold precision, and her stepsister, Chloe, was raised like a treasure. Lily was raised like an afterthought. The Turner family belonged to the Crimson Moon Pack, one of the largest and most respected wolf packs in the region. Status mattered more than anything else. Bloodlines were tracked, futures were planned, and children were measured by what they could bring to the pack. Chloe was beautiful, confident, and endlessly charming. She had been trained since childhood to become a leader's wife. Lily, on the other hand, was quiet. She kept to herself, worked hard without complaint, and never asked for anything. What no one in the household knew, except Diane, was that Lily was not an ordinary wolf. She came from her late mother's side, a bloodline that had once been powerful, but was believed to be nearly extinct. Diane had discovered the truth years ago, buried deep in old pack records, and she made sure no one else ever learned it. If people knew what Lily truly was, she would rise above Chloe in status. Diane could not allow that, so she hid the papers, silenced the rumors, and made sure Lily never learned who she really was. Lily grew up believing she was simply unlucky, unloved perhaps, but not unusual. The person who made her days bearable was Ryan Blackwood, the future alpha of Crimson Moon Pack. Ryan was kind to everyone, but Lily convinced herself that his kindness toward her meant something more. When she was younger, he would walk with her after training sessions and ask about her day. He complimented her cooking once, and she thought about it for a week. She created an entire world around him in her mind, a quiet hope she rarely admitted even to herself. But hope is a fragile thing. As the years passed, Ryan's attention shifted more and more toward Chloe. Diane made sure of it, arranging encounters, praising Chloe's beauty in front of pack elders, and slowly pushing Ryan toward the idea that Chloe was the only reasonable choice for a future alpha's wife. Lily watched it all happen from a distance, telling herself that her feelings did not matter. She was, after all, only a stepdaughter, not a real Turner, not someone anyone would choose. When Ryan proposed to Chloe at the pack's spring gathering, the entire pack cheered. Lily stood near the back of the crowd, clapping along with everyone else, her chest aching in a way she refused to name. She told herself it was for the best. She told herself many things that year. The wedding was set for early autumn, and preparations consumed the pack house for months. Lily was given the role of assistant to the wedding planner, which meant she spent her days arranging flowers, checking guest lists, and making sure everything ran smoothly for the marriage of the man she loved to her own stepsister. She never complained. She simply worked, quietly, as she always had. The night before the wedding, Lily sat alone in the garden behind the pack house, staring up at the moon. She had grown used to solitude, but this particular night pressed harder on her heart than most. "You could leave, you know," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Marcus, an older wolf who worked as the pack's historian. He was one of the few people who had always treated her with quiet respect. "Leave to where?" Lily asked. "This is my home." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "Sometimes what feels like home is only a cage we have grown used to." He didn't explain further, and Lily didn't ask him to. She simply nodded and let the words settle somewhere deep inside her, unsure yet of what they meant. The wedding day arrived bright and clear, the kind of golden autumn morning that pack elders called a good omen. Guests arrived from packs across the region, filling the grand hall with laughter and celebration. Chloe looked radiant in a gown embroidered with silver thread, and Ryan stood at the altar in his ceremonial coat, looking every bit the future leader he was destined to become. Lily stood near the back, as she always did, watching the ceremony unfold. She smiled when she was supposed to smile. She clapped when she was supposed to clap. When Ryan and Chloe exchanged their vows, something inside her quietly closed, like a door shutting for the final time. The reception that followed was even grander than the ceremony. Long tables filled with food stretched across the hall, musicians played, and pack members danced late into the evening. Lily busied herself checking on guests and refilling drinks, grateful for tasks that kept her hands occupied and her mind distracted. It was nearly midnight when everything changed. The doors at the far end of the hall burst open, and a wave of tension rolled through the room like a sudden drop in temperature. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Guards who had been standing casually near the entrance dropped to one knee without hesitation. Even the musicians stopped playing, their instruments falling silent. Lily, standing near the back wall with a tray in her hands, felt it too, though she did not understand what it was. A pressure in the air, a pull in her chest, something ancient and undeniable. A man walked through the doors as if he owned every inch of the hall, and in truth, in the world of packs, there were few places he did not have authority over. He was Alpha King Damian Cross, ruler over all the packs in the region, a leader so powerful that most wolves went their entire lives without ever standing in his presence. No one had invited him. No one had expected him. Yet here he was, dressed simply, his expression unreadable, as his eyes swept across the stunned crowd. Ryan stepped forward immediately, bowing low. "Alpha King, this is an unexpected honor. Please, join us in celebration." Damian did not answer him. His head turned slightly, as though following an invisible thread through the air, and his gaze moved past Ryan, past Chloe, past Diane's frozen expression, until it landed on Lily standing near the back wall. The tray slipped slightly in her hands. She had never in her life had someone look at her the way he was looking at her now, as though she were the only person in the entire hall. He crossed the room without a word, guests parting instinctively out of his path. Lily's heart pounded so hard she was certain everyone around her could hear it. She had no idea what was happening, only that every instinct in her body was screaming at her to pay attention, that something enormous was unfolding right in front of her. Damian stopped only a few feet away and inhaled slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. Then, to the shock of everyone in the hall, he lowered himself to one knee. "Mate," he said, his voice carrying easily across the silent room. The word landed like a thunderclap. Every wolf present understood exactly what it meant. A mate bond was not something chosen or arranged. It was recognized, instinctive, undeniable, and permanent. For the Alpha King to kneel and speak that word meant only one thing. Lily was his fated match, the one wolf in the world bound to him by nature itself. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ryan's face went pale as understanding crashed over him. Chloe's triumphant smile from earlier in the evening crumbled into disbelief. Diane's hand flew to her mouth, her carefully built world of secrets suddenly threatening to collapse in front of the most powerful wolf alive. "There must be some mistake," Diane said quickly, stepping forward. "Lily is nothing, a stepdaughter. She has no status, no title." Damian rose to his full height, and the shift in the air was immediate. His dominance rolled outward like a wave, and every wolf in the hall, without exception, bowed under the weight of it. Even Ryan, future alpha of his own pack, found himself lowering his head. "Nothing?" Damian repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "This woman is the last living descendant of the Hallow bloodline, one of the oldest lines among our kind. Her lineage alone would place her above most alphas in this room. Tell me, Diane Turner, why has this truth been buried?" The color drained completely from Diane's face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Marcus, the pack historian, stepped forward from the crowd, his expression grim. "Alpha King, I suspected something was hidden in the Turner family records years ago, but I was never given access to confirm it. If Diane has concealed Lily's true lineage, the records would still exist somewhere in this house." Damian's gaze did not leave Diane. "Bring them," he said simply, and it was not a request. Within the hour, the truth unraveled in front of the entire gathering. Old documents were retrieved from a locked drawer in Diane's private study, papers that clearly listed Lily's mother as a direct descendant of the Hallow line, a bloodline believed extinct for over a century. Diane had discovered this truth shortly after marrying into the family and had spent years quietly suppressing it, terrified that if the pack learned who Lily really was, Chloe's carefully built future would fall apart. Ryan stood frozen through it all, staring at Lily as though seeing her for the first time. He thought of every quiet moment they had shared over the years, every kindness she had extended to him without ever asking for anything in return, and the weight of what he had overlooked settled heavily in his chest. He had married the wrong sister, though not because Chloe was unworthy, but because he had never truly looked past the surface to notice what had been standing quietly beside him for years. Chloe, for her part, said nothing. She simply stared at Lily with an expression that mixed disbelief and something almost like fear. The wedding she had just celebrated, the status she had just secured, suddenly meant far less standing next to the truth that had just walked through the door. Lily said nothing either. She stood very still, absorbing everything, the tray long forgotten somewhere behind her, years of feeling invisible, of being told in 100 small ways that she did not matter, collided with this sudden, overwhelming truth. She was not nothing. She had never been nothing. She had simply been hidden. Damien turned back to her, his expression softening slightly as he studied her face. "You didn't know," he said quietly, not a question, but an observation. "No," Lily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know any of this." "That changes now," he said. He extended his hand toward her, waiting, giving her the choice that no one in her life had ever truly given her before. "You do not have to stay in a place that never valued you. You do not have to explain yourself to anyone here again." Lily looked around the hall, at Ryan's stricken face, at Chloe's collapsing composure, at Diane's exposed lies laid bare for everyone to see. Then she looked at the hand extended toward her, offered freely, without conditions. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her, without hesitation, without comparison, without needing her to prove her worth first. She placed her hand in his. Damien led her through the hall, and this time, no one dared to look away. Pack members bowed on either side as they passed, out of respect not for her status alone, but for the undeniable truth that had just reshaped everything they thought they understood about the quiet girl who had spent years fading into the background. At the entrance, Lily paused and looked back one final time. Ryan met her eyes, guilt and regret written plainly across his face, but she felt no satisfaction in it, no desire for revenge. She simply felt free, as though a weight she had carried her entire life had finally been lifted. "Are you ready?" Damien asked gently. Lily took a breath, feeling something steady and certain settle inside her for the first time in years. "Yes," she said, "I am." Together they walked out into the cool autumn night, leaving behind the wedding that was never meant to break her, and stepping instead into a future she never could have imagined, one where she was finally completely seen.